sounds. And thank you for coming tonight. It's always my pleasure to be able to interact with the San Jose Silicon Valley branch. It's definitely something that I miss sometimes, is being able to be in a leadership position. But when the leadership is in such fine hands, it makes me feel good to stand from afar and watch some of the work that the branch is doing out here. I bring you greetings from the California State Conference of the NAACP. We're both California and Hawaii. The one thing I'm disappointed about is that we don't have more meetings in Hawaii. In fact, I've been a vice president for the last 8 years and we haven't had one single meeting in Hawaii. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting more engaged in some of the Hawaii issues. For tonight, we're going to have the opportunity to have 2-minute introductions from each of you. We will maybe we'll flip a coin, or if you can decide between who goes first, and then we'll flip that for the closing, and we'll have 2-minute closing. After we get to 1.5 minutes, you will get a warning. Ms. Sims will be keeping the time to just keep you alert. The red card right there. So to be just like in soccer, you'll get a red card and you know that you're almost coming to it's almost over there. And then we will have you about 3 minutes for each of the questions. You should have received the questions that were in advance that will be asked. There's going to be a few more that I've added on just to make sure that we're talking about some local issues and things that I think you should be very familiar with and should be able to answer. Unless the president and vice president have anything else, we will give these ladies the opportunity to do an opening, and then we will hop directly into the other questions.
Okay.
So, Deb?
Hi, I'm Deb Davis, and I thank you all for coming tonight and for giving us the opportunity to answer some new questions. We got a chance to look at these questions, and they're different from the ones that we've been answering in the primary. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness in bringing these new questions to us. I've been in ed research for the last 12 years at Stanford University, which is also where I got my master's degrees in public policy and in education policy. And in addition to that, I have 2 children, one of whom attends Willow Glen Elementary as a 5th grader, and the other one who attends Hoover Middle School as a 6th grader, so she's new there this year. They're both in the bilingual program. In addition, our family has a small business. My husband is a graphic and product designer, and he does that through our small business. I've been involved in the community in a number of ways. I've served on the Early Care and Education Commission, which I chaired before it merged into the Library Commission. That's one of our city's groups. And then I also served on my neighborhood association, the North Willow Glen Neighborhood Association, and served as president for 2 years. So have been involved in various different ways in the community, and as well as serving on a couple of nonprofit boards. I'm really running because when my kids were little, there were a lot of service cuts happening in the city, and it was just very difficult to have small children and to have the libraries closed half the week and to have park bathrooms locked and to have parks not being maintained. So that's one of the things that I just want to make sure doesn't happen again. I'm really running because I think it's really important for us to provide all of our 5 core services: police, fire, roads, parks, and libraries. As my great introducer mentioned, those are my priorities for fully funding all of those and providing them to the best of our ability for all of the citizens of San Jose. So thank you again for having me, and I appreciate this opportunity.
It's a pleasure to be here, and actually I'm thrilled when the students run the democratic process, because as leaders we can do and we can say what our vision is, but then our actions are going to affect you. So I'm really thrilled that you've invited us to listen and get a little bit of a taste of what it's like, to run the process of the debate, and also to interview the candidates. So my name is Helen Chapman. I'm running for San Jose City Council. I'll tell you the story how I started to run, or how I really got involved. I moved into my house about 28 years ago, and my husband and I were sitting down for dinner, and all of a sudden we heard yelling from across the street. It was my neighbor, because he was yelling because his son was having a seizure and he was crying out for help. We run across the street, there's my neighbor. What can I do? Call the ambulance. Okay, fine, we called the ambulance, we called 911, we're standing here trying to get him some help. The ambulance comes, but you know what happened? The ambulance drove past his house. Why? Because there was no street light there, so his house was dark. Long story short, his son was fine, he got the help, we flagged down the ambulance, and his son was taken care of. A week later, there was a neighborhood association meeting, and I took it upon myself, I'm going to go to the neighborhood association meeting and get involved. I went as a parent, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go talk to my council member, and I asked for a street light. I raised my hand and said, what can we do to get a street light on my street? Not a problem. The person came over, said, took my name, and said, okay, we're going to get you a street light. And about 3 months later, we got the street light. That experience got me fired up, and I guess you could say the light turned on, because from then, I got a park built in my neighborhood right next to that library where that community meeting was held, and it was a culmination of community efforts that did that. So bringing people together in that consensus, it's a life of service that I've had for 25 years. And like I said, I'm not about to give up now. It's what I love, and it's what I cherish, and it's what I want to represent you on City Council, because you know what? We are a city of great neighborhoods, and when we give back, we just make our city even better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going to hop into the questions, and thank you, Deb, for pointing out the fact that I don't know many of you have seen the questions. Some of the questions are different. These are questions that are of concern to communities of color and things that they're going to look for their leaders on the council. But before we hop into some of those questions, I want to start with a question that will help everyone to understand what you see as a potential future leader on the council. And the question is, what do you see as the top 3 issues for the city of San Jose, and how do you plan to address just the top one? Remember, you only have 3 minutes, to answer. And we're going to start with you, Helen, since Dev opened, and we'll rotate on the question. So we'll start with you. Top 3 issues, and then...
Top 3 issues: homeless, affordable housing, and public safety. I think hands down, we all know we have affordable housing crisis. We know we have a large homeless population that's growing, and we have a police department that's really down to 825 police officers, down from 1,400 years ago. Those are things that we need. It's a challenge, and we need somebody strong on the council that's going to look at those issues and really start to dive into them and work on solutions. I want to do that. I want to work on homeless. I think that's one of the greatest things that we can work on right now. The conversation has lifted up to a point where I think we can all look in this room and say, is it affordable to live in San Jose right now? No. And I have 2 kids living with me. My son, who's 31, who's a Marine vet, and my youngest son, who's 25, who's a student at San Jose State. They're still living with me because they can't afford to rent. And so, you know, this is a challenge that we have in our city, and I'm sure it's a challenge for everyone here, is that if we find San Jose unaffordable, how are we going to lift up our homeless population? So we need to work on transitional housing to try and move homeless inside, off the streets. We need to get people services, we need to get them connected to services, and we need to start lifting people up. We have to address the affordable housing crisis, and we have to work on public safety. And some of these things are all kind of intertwined, because you can have someone on the street and you can think that they're causing crime. Well, maybe they're not. They're just reaching out for help. And again, we also have to work with our police force and try and bring more officers back to our city, and work on the incidents of crime that are happening. So these are some difficult issues, and I want to get into those issues and really tackle them. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the top 3 issues facing our city are public safety, jobs, and I agree with the shortage of housing. The thing that I think is most important to bring to San Jose is jobs. We only have 84 jobs for every 100 employed residents in our city. And what that means is our city shrinks during the day. A lot of people travel up the peninsula or even travel up to East Bay to go to work every day. That diminishes our tax base. And without a stable tax base, we can't afford the core services, we can't afford to do planning and permitting departments, to fully staff them so that we can build the housing that we need, so that we can attract even more businesses. So it's really important for us to start in a couple of spots with bringing more jobs to San Jose. One is to actually go into the planning and permitting processes and streamline them. We can do a streamlined process with the staff that we have, and then we want to bring down the fees over time. What that will do is two things. It will address the jobs issue because it will attract businesses to San Jose, which currently are going to Santa Clara because it's easier to do business there, or they're going to Milpitas or Sunnyvale. They're going nearby, but they're not choosing to be in San Jose because it's just too hard to get your plans through City Hall. That will also help plans for housing to get through City Hall. But our housing crisis is unfortunately a 9-county Bay Area region-wide problem. So we can start to tackle it, but we need to focus on what we can do for San Jose, which is improve the tax base so that we can fully fund our public safety, so we can fully fund our road maintenance, which we've been neglecting for over a decade. We need to fund our roads at $100 million a year, which is a tenth of our budget. But we don't do that because we can't afford to. So the last budget cycle, we funded $17 million of the $100 million in road maintenance. So all those potholes that you drive through in town are because we don't have the tax base to fully fund our core services. So we need to attract businesses here, starting with planning and permitting, and then going on to developing a partnership, public-private partnership. We have one right now called Team San Jose. And what that does is it attracts tourism dollars and tourist attractions to San Jose. So anything that happens at the convention center or anything that happens at the Shark Tank that's not the actual sharks was brought here by Team San Jose. So we need a similar public-private partnership to attract jobs to San Jose. We could call it Jobs San Jose. And what that would do is to market our city as a place where families can both live and work. So it's a place where companies want to come because your families are already living here. Your employees are already living here.
Okay. Thank you. One of the things that you both identified was public safety is in your top 3. I think, Deb, you identified it as number 1 and number 3. So I'm going to start with public safety questions. I don't think it's any surprise that that I would probably start with this when what you hear in the news is Mr. Kaepernick basically sitting on a knee or sitting down as a result of his concern with policing and the effects. So you can probably see where I'm going to go with the first question. Deb, the first question is going to be to you. We've often heard of the Black Lives Movement, and you hear other people saying all lives matter, etc. Tell me what you believe the difference is in the difference between the Black and Brown Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter meaning or movement.
Yeah, so I want to preface by saying this is a really personal topic to me. I know I'm white, but my kids are adopted and they are Latino, and this has been a real eye-opener the last few years, especially as my kids get older and near adolescence. So to me, the Black and Brown Lives Matter movement is very personal and shines a light on the systemic disparity in treatment from the law enforcement between white Americans and Black and Brown Americans or people of color. I think the All Lives Matter, I wouldn't even call it a movement. I think it's just a meme. And what I think it is designed to do is to disregard those issues that are real, and to ignore the fact that there's disparate treatment at the hands of law enforcement, depending on what your skin tone is. So that's what I look at, and I think there are so many tough issues, and I think it is really important to keep the spotlight on these issues until we can have real dialogue about, because we're not even there, right? We're not even there, I don't think, yet for having the actual dialogue about what needs to be changed and what are the root causes of these issues. So I think I'm very grateful to the Black and Brown Lives Matter movements to continue to shine that spotlight on, especially as my kids get older.
Helen, the difference between the Black Brown Lives Matter movement and All Lives Matter movement statements.
I'm glad you asked the question, because I think sometimes there's some misunderstanding, but it really comes down to the fact, I'm a mother of 2 sons, And before my sons leave the house, and they're not here so I can't embarrass them, but the first thing I tell them is be safe. And why is that? Because they probably got keys to the car, or they're going out, and you worry. And as a mother, you always worry. And I would say as a woman of color, you probably worry even more, because you don't know, you fear for the safety of your child. And that's something I think we can all connect with as mothers, because you want your child to be able to go out in the world and be safe and have options. I worry about that. My son served in the Marines. I can tell you that was a horrendous day when I had to see him 19 years old and leave my house and had nothing on his back but just his clothes, and I'm sending my son off to war. I worried. I couldn't watch the television. And I'm sure there are times that you can't either, and you worry that are you going to get stopped because of what color you are. I'm white. I haven't had to live with that, but I can imagine as a mother what you have to live with, because again, I worry about my kids. I think it's time that we are acknowledging that conversation, but it's also, it says something that this is 2016, and why are we still having this conversation? We should have been past this now. Even, with women's rights, we're still having that same conversation. We should be greater as a nation, that we should have moved past the racial divide, that we should be owning that conversation between ourselves and being able to start to break down differences. But we're not doing that. Why? Is it easy to fear? Probably is. Because it's harder, it's probably easier to buy into the fear than it is to sit across somebody and have a difference and trying to break down those differences by having that honest conversation. And I've done that as a mother with teenagers and going into adults. There's times they have very difficult conversations with you. And you learn. You learn to listen. And as a council member, I want to bring that, because I think we do more talking than we do listening. And I think that's how we start to break down our differences. Thank you.
Okay. And I have a follow-up on both of on this question for both of you, because both of you pretty much acknowledge that this is real. This is not just a statement of what people are saying. These things are really occurring into our community. So beyond calls for just general police de-escalation training, what reform or changes would you want to see in the when as it relates to this issue in general? We started with you before, Deb. Helen, we'll start with you.
It's probably something very similar I experienced when I worked at San Jose Unified. We had diversity training, and it was where we were made to look at ourselves and how diversity happens between different ethnicities. There were things I wasn't aware of. And every employee had to go through that as part of our training, because as a school district employee, you deal with children of every nationality, every ethnicity. There's 99 languages in San Jose Unified. So you have to go, and you have to be open to that. I think we can do relationship-based training with the police, with the fire, again, because they are our first responders, and to be open and to learn how other cultures operate. But what I worry about is that we have so few officers right now. How do we fit that in when we're trying to rebuild the police force? I think it's doable. I think it could be part of the police training as they come in and recruiting, but it's something I want to see, again, to have that dialogue.
Okay, Deb?
I think personal bias training is really important. It sounds something like very similar to the diversity training that you described, Holland, but I went through personal bias training, which was extremely eye-opening myself at Stanford, and it's really interesting to go through and think that you know what your biases are, and just to have that, it's actually an online, it's really kind of cool. It's this online website by some university, not Stanford, so I can't remember which one. And you go in and you're just clicking left and right as you're reading on the screen. And there are different kinds of bias tests that you can take. It's really cool. I highly recommend it for everybody. There are color biases, there are sexual orientation biases, all kinds of biases. That kind of training, I think, is really important to add into the police academy, and then also to have with police officers themselves. So that's one thing. De-escalation training, I think, is really important. So I know it was kind of like part of other than this, but I think it's worth mentioning and worth emphasizing that de-escalation training is really important, because it seems to me, and what I'm seeing in the news, especially very young police officers who are new, tend to reach for their guns really quickly. And we know the number of tragedies that have happened as a result of that. So I think de-escalation training is really important before people go out on patrol, and even as refreshers on a regular basis, because I think it's very stressful to be out on patrol on a regular basis, and we probably need some reminders about both personal bias and also about de-escalation training. Third, I would also add training on mental health issues. That's something that our first responders are encountering more and more often now, and I think it's really important to add that to police training and an ongoing continuing education for police officers. I think that would help. There was another thing that I wanted to say, and it's completely gone. I'm not sure what it is, but I do want to say. I remember. I think it's important for not only the police and also fire, but also the council members to engage the community and see what they think the needs are. Because, again, I'm white. I know that I'm not experiencing it. I fear for what my children will experience as they get older. But it's important to get input from the people who are experiencing it to see what they think the issues are from their perspective. And what really needs to happen there. So I think community engagement needs to be a piece of that. And I actually think the city council needs to take the lead on that, since they're the representatives.
You've both touched on the fact that our police force is significantly dwindled than what it was even a decade ago. Everyone in this room, every person of color wants to basically be able to live in a safe community, obviously without being harassed. Starting with you, Deb, what are your plans to help rebuild the police force so that we can have an adequately policed community in all of our communities?
Yes, thank you. I think a couple things need to happen. Of course, we need more police officers, and one of the things we need to do is really look at our recruiting practices. Our recruiting practices haven't changed over time, at least not as quickly as they need to address the fact that we have a nationwide shortage of police officers. So happily, the City Council is looking at bringing in recruiting specialists to help the police department actually learn how to recruit in a different way and hopefully get a larger pool of recruits to increase the size of the classes. In addition to that, I think it's really important for us to add to the police force in the ways that we can. So community service officers is one way that we can, one area of staff that we can add and kind of restructure the department, as many strapped police departments have done over the last even 25 years. So our community service officer program is 2 years old, and what they do now is respond to lower priority calls, mostly during the day because they don't work into the evening. So I think they work 7 to 7 or 7 to 5. And we could expand those hours, and we could also expand the duties. So one of the things that police officers do now that community service officers could do is transport evidence. Just transport evidence between courthouse and the police department, the evidence room. So that's one thing that community service officers could do to help us increase the number of police officers that we have available for patrol. Another thing that I think they could do, which would just help restructure kind of who's doing what where, is to have community service officers during the day, if we had more of them, patrolling in areas where there's a large number of property crimes but not violent crime. So we were talking about de-escalation training. Community service officers are not trained in that. They don't carry a firearm. They don't do traffic stops. But they can be eyes and ears on the ground, and we all need that in our neighborhoods to prevent property crime that's happening, especially during the day when people are at work and away from their homes. So again, I think it's important to recruit in a different way so that we can have more police officers, but also look at our staffing and see if we can change it around a little bit, add more community service officers who take 5 weeks to get trained instead of the 9 months that a police officer gets trained, and have them doing some of the administrative duties that police officers are still doing, so that we can free up more police officers for patrol.
Okay, Helen.
It may sound really trite, but I think what we really first and foremost need to do is return the respect back to our public safety officers. There's been a division created when we had the fight over pension reform. A lot of bad press, a lot of bad feelings took place, and I think we need to stop that division. And there is a ballot measure right now, Measure F, which would now start to give some certainty back. It would not put in the bad parts of Measure B, it would reinforce the good parts, and then it would give some certainty as to disability benefits, which right now, it's up in the air, and so no officer is going to want to get hired because they don't know, number one, salary they're going to get paid because they're being hired under the old rules, and they don't know what disability pay they're going to get. And so that's something to be worried about. If you get injured on the job, you want to know what your benefits are. Anybody working wants to know that. So that's one thing we can start. We can pass the measure. It starts to solve that. We can start to rebuild the police force, and then we can put things in place and say, okay, now we're going to move forward. And as a community, we're going to move forward. Community service officers are great, but they can't write a ticket. They can take the report. They can go out and they can do the trainings, and it's wonderful. I think we do need more community service officers. That's a place to do. But we have to worry about the serious crimes taking place. The number of homicides is increasing for this year. We need, there's the traffic patrol. You see the speeding on the street. It's very well aware that everybody's saying we need to slow the speeding down because nobody's ticketing. There are some serious issues taking place, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt because we have a stressed out police force, because they're working overtime, they're living in their RVs, because they're going to the next shift. We've got to put more people on the job, and we have to do something now to start that. So Measure F is one solution, community service officers are another, but I think it's having that discussion. I've had some meetings with neighbors just having this dialogue, and I know this is a meet and confer, but somebody brought up the point, why not open a fire station to some of the police officers so they could at least spend the night there? Whoa. That's the kind of conversation we can have as a community. We can come together because we know what the issue is. So if we know what the problem is, then we as a community start to work on the solution. And we start to work together. And then we let the public safety officers know we are trying to help them work on the solution. And I think they're going to be more willing to work with us if we are part of a team rather than constantly building forces. Thank you.
One quick follow-up for both of you. So I'm just going to ask for 30 seconds. What is I talked about the rebuilding of the police force. What is your commitment to making sure that police force looks like the faces and ethnicities in this room? Start with, I believe, you, Deb, and then you, Helen. Just 30 seconds.
Okay. I think, again, it goes back to recruiting and being very deliberate about how you recruit. And it's important to recruit from the community, first of all. And it's important to be, again, very deliberate about the way you recruit. And that's how you get people through the police academy that look like the rest of our city, all of our city. So it starts there with very, very mindful, deliberate recruiting.
Absolutely. We need our police force and our fire department to reflect our community and the diversity that we have. That is something absolutely very important to do. And again, with recruiting, but again, it's making sure that we're interacting with the community to let them know too that this is what our priority is. And we talk to the police chief, and we interact with the mayor's gang task force, and we let those people know this is what we want as a community.
Okay. About 10 to 8, just for the audience, about 10 to 8, I'll start to take questions from the audience, but I know that we have cards. I don't know if they've been handed out, or if you would like one, just raise your hand. Please write down what the question will be. I guess our president, Diana, will hand them out to folks. So just raise your hand if you like one. I will take them and try to make it through, or Diana, excuse me, we'll make it through as many as we can to the questions. But now I'm going to move on from public safety, just because of the matter of time. One of the things that, Dev, you brought up, you said jobs was in your top 3. I didn't have that as in your top 3, but I'm sure the economy, everyone wants a good economy here. So I'm going to move on towards the economy. What often, you hear the saying that when the economy goes bad, it catches, when the economy goes bad, what you see is the African American and Latino community are always at the worst side of it and always at the underside. If you look at the earning capacity of what's going, if you look at the job capacity, including kids being able to be hired. So we're going to start there. We're going to move straight into the jobs and economy. First question, do you support the $15 per hour minimum wage? Please share your position. I believe start with you, Helen, and then go to Deb.
Absolutely, I support the $15 minimum wage. We have to lift people up, and if we have disadvantaged communities and you can't find, I mean, I can't say it enough. My kids live with me. I'm struggling as someone's been in the middle class, and to watch them hit my generation and to know that I can't give my kids what my parents gave me. I mean, it's profound, and I feel, I don't want to feel hopeless, but I want to feel like I can do something about it. And I think acknowledging that we have to have that minimum wage, and we have to have more affordable housing, and we have to bring in more opportunities is something critical, and local jobs, so that we're not clogging the freeways with people that are living so far out in Tracy and Modesto or Manteca and trying to commute in because they can't afford to live here. We really have to raise people up, and we have to acknowledge that there's probably areas within District 6 that we haven't given much attention to, and we have to lift all communities up. And I really want to do that.
I do not support the $15 minimum wage, at least as it's currently scheduled to increase. And the reason is because I'm a data person, and I know that small increases in minimum wage have been found to have a negligible effect on discouraging businesses. What we have never seen is a huge increase, so this would be a 50% increase in minimum wage in about 5 years. And we have never seen that before. And so I'm very concerned about what that would mean for entry-level jobs, especially for youth. I think what's likely to happen if we have a $15 minimum wage, instead of raising all boats and raising communities, I think what's going to happen is minimum wage jobs are going to decrease. I think there will be an increase in automation because it will just make sense for people to have fewer employees and have the kiosks like you may see at Panera. Panera just started doing this recently in the last year, and you go and you order on a touch screen instead of having people work there. So there are 2 people there at the lunch rush instead of 6 people or 8 people there. So it's already happening, and I think it will just accelerate that problem, which is a decline in entry-level jobs for youth to have. And then if they can't get on the ladder, how can they move up the ladder? So that's why I don't support the $15 minimum wage, at least in the increase in the short amount of time that it's currently scheduled to happen.
Okay. We're going to go to a real local issue as it relates to not necessarily the minimum wage, but basically the opportunity to work. For everyone here, in case you don't know what the Opportunity to Work initiative, it is on the ballot this November, and I cannot recall which measure it is. Measure E. In summary, basically what it does, it will decide, it will ensure that before San Jose businesses hire any full-time or any additional part-time workers, they have to basically make their current part-time workers full-time. I believe the threshold is 38 employees for a business, which some say small business or not, but that's a quick nutshell of what it does. It does a few other things. The questions that I have for the candidates, we're starting with you, Deb. Helen was the last one to answer, is do you support the Opportunity to Work initiative? Why or why not?
So again, my background's in economics. I don't support the Opportunity to Work initiative. I said before at the beginning that we have only 84 jobs for every 100 employed residents. The more regulations we put on businesses, the less likely we are to have businesses want to move here. And it might be a small business, but they might have plans to grow up beyond 38 employees. As the measure stands, we are going to discourage businesses from being here. We're going to discourage businesses that are here from staying here. I know a lot of businesses, no businesses were consulted in formulating this measure. A lot of businesses are very concerned about the potential litigation costs of having this, as well as the paperwork that it's gonna cause. In addition, there are event-based businesses and temporary businesses that rely on part-time workers, and there's no exemption for them in this measure. So there are just a lot of things about this measure that again are going to discourage businesses from coming here, which in the end actually makes it so that there are fewer jobs available, fewer part-time jobs available for the people who would want them, especially our youth who have to start out with part-time entry-level jobs.
Helen.
I do support Measure E. I was one of those part-time employees. I started at San Jose Unified part-time. And I was a volunteer for a long time, and they said, "Oh, come on, you can work for San Jose Unified." So I start off part-time, and then my hours were increased. I went from part-time to 3/4 time to eventually to full-time, and I worked there 16 years. You want to be able to bring somebody in and have that opportunity to advance within, and not have that job supplanted with somebody else, so that you are not growing within that company. You grow institutional memory that way. You grow relationships that way. That's why I support Measure E.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move towards a federal level issue now, as it relates to everyone. Does everyone know what Citizen United is? The case? Does anyone not know? I think it's been out there for a while. So that one I'm assuming everyone knows, rather than give folks a dissertation on what Citizen United is. We're going to start with you. Quick answer. What's your position regarding the corporations been considered a person? I believe, are we with? Yeah, we're with you, Helen. And same thing for Deb. So the position of Citizens United in essence.
Yes, I do not support that corporations are people. We need to end the big money and campaign financing, period. Done.
Okay. Deb.
I agree, it's really problematic. I think it's also important to note that I think corporations and unions need to be treated the same under electoral laws. And so corporations aren't people, but there's also a problem with unions using dues without votes of their dues-paying members about which candidates they support.
Okay. We're going to go back to the state level. Looking at the proposed tobacco tax that's on the ballot at $2 per pack, $2 to the price per pack of a cigarette. Do you support that, and how do you believe the dollar should be used? We're going to start with you, Deb.
Yes, I do support that. We know that every time we increase the price of cigarettes or tobacco, that the usage for teens falls, and that's what we want. We know it's not a healthy habit, and we know it's an addictive habit. So I do support that, and I really support. We have a lot of tobacco money continuing to be used for health issues, and I support that money being used for health education and health issues in our state.
I'm a proud member of Relay for Life, Willow Glen. I've been doing it for 5 years, and yes, I do support the tobacco tax. Let's see, get tongue-tied. And use it for cancer research. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to move from the economy over into homeless and housing. I believe, Helen, you had homeless as your number 1 issue, and Deb, you had housing as your number 3 issue. So we're going to start with, what is your plan on the council to increase affordable housing? I believe Deb, or Helen, we'll start with you.
60%, according to the General Plan 2040, what we should be building right now should be affordable, and we're not. We are severely behind on our goals. There are several things that we can do to look at that. We can look at secondary units, granny units. That might be an easy way to accommodate. I look at it in my house. I mean, we have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, and my sons live with me. It'd be great if I could move one into the backyard, into our 3-car garage, which has no car in it. And that would be, a good way to start. But we have to look at opportunities. We have to look at transitional housing. We have Casa de Nova, which was the Santa Clara Inn off the Alameda, and now Abode Services is handling and is transitioned homeless into some supportive housing, and it's working. And the first thing they've done is the crime has come down because the people are inside and they're getting the treatment they need and they're getting the services they need. So to expand those type of things, that's a start. Secondary units, and to expand opportunities for affordable housing, maybe within our urban villages. There are things we could be doing now that to expand.
Okay, Deb.
Again, I think it's really important for the city council to take leadership on this issue. We're the largest county, or largest city in the largest county in the 9-county Bay Area region. The homelessness issue is tied to the housing shortage, which is region-wide, and that's something that, as a city council member, I really want to take a leadership role on, which is to provide all of the housing. So the way that housing is, there's a regional body that allocates, this is how many units of housing San Jose should build, this is how many units of housing Santa Clara should build, etc. And while Santa Clara County is providing 74% of the amount of housing it's allocated to do, and that's the highest of all 9 counties, we're not at 100%. And San Jose is not at 100% of the housing that it should be providing. So we need to be a leader, and we need to start with streamlining our planning and permitting processes first of all, because no projects get built without going through the planning and permitting processes at City Hall, and they're getting stuck there. And they're getting stuck there for a number of reasons, but they are reasons that are solvable. We can streamline those processes and move those projects through so they can get built. I think having the secondary units is also a fantastic idea. I can't tell you how many doors I've knocked on where people have told me, you know, if I could have my mother or if I could have my mother-in-law living in my backyard in a small structure, a small home, I would do that in a heartbeat, and that would free up her 3,000 square foot home that's, you know, half a mile down the road, but she can't afford to live somewhere else. And we want her close by so we can keep an eye on her. And you know, vice versa from that mother saying, you know, my son just lives down the road and I'd really like to live there, or I'd like him to live here in the big house and I could just move to my backyard. And so I think that's really important. An important partial solution to our housing crisis is really just having single family residence neighborhoods have those secondary units so that we can keep families together. So again, City Council needs to take a leadership role in the 9-county Bay Area region and say, we're building all of our housing, what are you doing? Because it's hard to throw rocks when you live in a glass house. And then also to take some leadership on these more creative ideas, like the secondary residences.
So everyone knows there's many in the community that do not have any homes, and so they are completely homeless. And you have folks that are completely working but still can't afford to live in homes. What is your position on the countywide parcel tax for homelessness, Measure A? Please explain. I believe we start with you, Deb.
So I have to say that I continue to be torn about this measure. I am, again, a data person. I'm a person who understands economics, and I know that we have a regional shortage of housing. I also know that the market is unlikely because we're just one city in the 9-county region. The market is unlikely to provide enough housing anytime soon for everybody, which is why I'm leaning towards supporting Measure A. My concern with Measure A is that it is a bond that will go through the county, and I'm sure you all read the paper and know that the county does not have a great track record in spending their bond money wisely, especially as it relates to the new county hospital. So I'm very concerned about the accountability in that spending for that $950 million, it's almost $1 billion bond that would be going through and being overseen by the county. So I'm leaning towards supporting it, but I'm very, very concerned and very interested in knowing exactly, needing to get comfortable with exactly how that oversight is going to happen and how that accountability is going to happen so that we don't get into a quagmire where that money is not spent wisely in providing as many units of housing as it possibly can.
Helen.
I endorse the measure. So, and I would urge you to also as well, or at least to look at the website and to go take a look at the measure. It's a countywide housing bond, so it's not just City of San Jose. So this does put resources in the hands of other cities near us that aren't maybe taking up the call to provide affordable housing that we should be. And it also has a slight incentive for first-time home buyers, which I think is also great because it starts to lift people up that maybe purchasing that house is just a little bit out of reach, and we can put that, and we can bring down the bar so that we can provide home buying assistance to someone that needs it. Maybe like a veteran, like my son. So I'm encouraged to see this go forward. It's something that we need to do. We need to get people off the street. We need to get them housed. We need to get them into transitional housing, again, with services, and we need to fund those services so that we can provide help, because we have to lift people up. When we connect people to services, most people don't want to be homeless, and there are working homeless, that we need to move them forward. On Nextdoor, just today, there was a discussion about a mother with 2 kids living at Cahill Park because she's got nowhere to go. And I was so proud of my neighborhood. Immediately this came up, and everybody said, call Office of Supportive Housing, call Sacred Heart, call this. You know, the outreach of support from my community was wonderful because they knew it wasn't like let's call the police and move them out of there because they're in the park. Let's help them. And that's what we should be doing. And that's what this housing bond is going to do, is provide those resources. And the County Board of Supervisors will provide that oversight, just like the City Council will provide the oversight for the tax measures. That's our job. And, and if I say, this is my priority and this is what the funds are going to be used for, that's what's going to happen. That's where that's what I'm going to do. And because that's the role of the council member or the supervisor.
Okay. Speaking of the county, I'm going to stay there. Obviously, we have a VTA tax that's also on the ballot. I'd like to understand what's your position on the VTA tax. Please explain.
This is Measure B.
This is Measure B. We went from A to B.
I'm getting my alphabet down here, right?
A to B.
Oh, we're going to have a long ballot this time, November.
Very long.
Yeah. Yes, I support Measure B. I think this hopefully will be the final step to bring the park to San Jose. As someone that grew up in the East Bay in the 70s, I remember going to the BART station, MacArthur Station, and getting a tour of the first BART station there. And I know I grew up using BART and worked in San Francisco. And my father still lives up there, so this would be a way that I don't have to get on the freeway in order to go see my father or to go see my sisters that live up there. So it's something that we need to do. We need to work on a regional transportation system. We also need to work on especially a transportation system that works on people that don't have the services. There's an underserved population that doesn't have access to the bus line or VTA, and we have to work on that. That's that first mile, last mile travel when you talk about that, is getting that access. And disadvantaged communities don't have that, or they're told, take the bus. And maybe there's no covered bus stop, and or their route to get there, is pretty bad. And we worked on that as a community prior to this measure coming on the ballot to make sure that some of those things and funding would be available and included in Measure B. So I was glad to be part of that. So yes.
I was going to start the questions from the audience. I do have only one question from the audience. I don't know if we've got a few more that are coming in. So I'm going to start with the first one that I have.
Do you want me to answer that question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off? Measure B. Yes. I apologize, Deb.
That's okay. I am also supporting Measure B, and it's not just because it will bring BART to downtown San Jose, and I'm an American League fan who needs to go to Oakland occasionally. Although it partially is. But also, the great thing about Measure B is that it is going to fund all types of transportation. So, most importantly for the city of San Jose, it is going to fund some of our road maintenance. You've heard me say before, I think we need to focus our spending on our 5 core services: police, fire, roads, parks, and libraries. And last year we spent $17 million of the $100 million on road maintenance. This year we're spending about $35 million of that. This will add another $30 million onto that. So that gets us almost 2/3 of the way to fully funding all of our backlog of road maintenance in every year, which is why I'm supporting the measure. We need paved roads because bike lanes happen on paved roads, buses drive on paved roads, cars drive on paved roads, and that's how we will get, some of us will get to our BART station in downtown San Jose. So I'm supporting the measure because it is going to help with all modes of transportation and help us get around our South Bay region, help us get around our Santa Clara County so that we can continue to be a driver of innovation, because we're going to be able to get around to all the different places we need to go.
All right, well, finally, agreement, because the last few questions we had, there definitely distinct differences between the two. This is a question for Deb Davis, but I'm going to ask it of both of you. I'm going to start with Deb. The question for you is, do you support Donald Trump? I assume that means Donald Trump for president.
No, I do not. And I actually had a press conference about this last week. I do not support him because of his many sexist, racist, xenophobic remarks that I think are just divisive and not good for America. they're over the line. We need real dialogue in our country, and calling people names is not dialogue. It's not true dialogue. It's just a bunch of shouting, and it's the same reason why I don't watch any TV news shows because it's all about a bunch of shouting, and I think that's where that presidential candidate came from and why he has gotten as far as he has. And no, I'm not supporting him. I never did. I never voted for him, and I didn't vote for him in June. I will not be voting for him in November.
Okay.
I'm a lifelong Democrat. I would not vote for Trump.
All right. You didn't have to use 3 minutes.
I didn't have to use 3 minutes. That's pretty easy. I think we need to build, we need to tear down walls, not build walls. That's
All right.
pretty simple, yeah.
Going to a question again, it's going to be for both of you. Start with you, Helen. How would you best support striking a balance between increasing employment and promoting business efficiency through technology?
That's a good question. I'm a very much of a small business proponent because I know what that's like to myself to have a small business and to see small businesses struggle because the permitting in order to move a small business into a building is extraordinarily difficult. And I think we've seen it on the Alameda, we've seen it with Teeny Thai, we've seen it with Zona Rosa, we've seen businesses that almost go out of business even before they open because the cost of doing business is so great and their savings are on the line. So I want to do more to help small business improve and to take advantage of some of the streamlining that takes place for some of our larger corporations, and I want to bring those benefits to them. In terms of technology, we are doing that right now with the planning department. It's streamlining the technology online to make permitting easier for large development and to see those large projects. So let's do the same thing for small business. Let's equalize, the benefits for both.
Okay, Deb, can you repeat the question?
It's the balance between
a balance between increasing employment and promoting business efficiency through technology.
Yes, I think actually the city council doesn't need to do this because all we need to do is we need to encourage businesses of all sizes to come to San Jose and to do their business here. And in doing that, we will get a wide range of employment opportunities and a wide range of businesses that are using varying technologies. So my husband, for example, has a small business. We have a small business, but he's going to be starting another business once all of this campaigning is over and he has a little bit more time. And the way that small businesses start is they can't make large investments in technology. They're doing small investments in technology. So the most you can do is buy maybe a 3D printer and a bunch of laptops, and that's your technology investment. Your real investment is in your people because that's where the brains are to run those businesses and to get things started off the ground. So what the city really needs to do is, again, to make it easier to come and do business in San Jose. And then we will get a wide range of business, a wide range of employment opportunities, and different levels of efficiency as businesses grow and begin to take advantage of different technologies and economies of scale.
Okay, thank you. Did I give that one to you? Yeah, Helen.
I answered that
Or
one.
did you answer that one? Okay, yes you did. I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask here, making
there's
sure.
a lot to do.
So actually, because I was looking at this question, I was just thinking about it. So it's actually it's a good question. It's real short. It's just for you, Deb. And you've mentioned it probably 2 or 3 times in your question. You talked about yourself being an economist. Folks would like to understand, as a trained economist, you subscribe to which type of economic theory? Can you just give a little bit of background so folks can understand?
Sure, that's a great question, and I have never been asked that question before. The school, I guess, of economics that I am from is called classical liberalism, and that's pretty much what they teach at Stanford, which is having government create the conditions as much as possible to allow the free market to work as much as it can. I temper that a little bit with reality, and you've heard me mention that we have a housing shortage and really you would want the market to work, but that's not realistic in any short amount of time in the Bay Area region, and so we have to enact policies that can help with that to the extent that we can, all the while the most important thing for me in enacting these policies where we see market failures that we can't correct is to be very aware of any unintended consequences. So creating inefficiencies, efficiency is very important in economics, I'm sure you all know that. Creating inefficiencies or creating problems down the line when you're solving one problem but creating a cascade of other problems that you didn't anticipate. So it's a really tempered version of what Hayek would call classical liberalism type of economics.
Thank you. Start with you, Helen. Do you plan on implementing any, this is going to be for both candidates too, do you plan on implementing anything into the education in San Jose to assist underprivileged and or students of color? If so, what? Start with you, Helen. Then.
Coming from San Jose Unified, I know during the good times we had homework centers that the city helped work with, and I would like to reinstall that and to see if we can get that going again. And I think there's tutoring that can take place. I mentor students at Lincoln High School now, and well, I'm very proud of Lincoln High School because Lincoln High School teaches diversity, and my kids grew up not, trusting everybody. And I want to lift up students so that they have the access to those services, to the libraries, but most of all to people. And I think sometimes those connections to other people and mentors and counselors is what's missing now in our education system. We've cut that out and we streamline. It's like you've got to, you got to teach the test and you've got to, get into a good college, but you're missing that personal side. And I think providing that personal side and that mentoring is extremely important because sometimes you don't have the parent at home or you're working 2 or 3 jobs. And so you need that access. And so I think doing that with the homework centers would help and providing some of that tutoring into the schools and those partnerships.
Yeah.
My first job out of college was at KIP, the Knowledge is Power program. I worked there for 2 years. It was a very small organization at that time, if you're not familiar with them. They're an organization that trains teachers how to become principals to open up their own charter schools. And they're very focused on underserved populations, especially historically underserved populations in cities and rural areas. So this is an issue about which I feel very passionately, and after that job, I went into education research, which I've been doing for 12 years, mainly on how well charter schools versus district schools are serving different populations of students. So this is really important, and I know how important it is for people of all income levels to have choice in their schooling and to be able to find the schooling that is right for their child. So one of the things that I think is important for City Council to do to promote education is to promote educational opportunity and to approve zoning for new charter schools as they come up so that there can be more choices and more opportunities for students of color, but for all students as well in San Jose. So that's one thing. Also, I think it's really important, we haven't talked very much about libraries, but that is really where the rubber meets the road for education in San Jose that the City Council can do anything about. There's a really cool tech shop that's started a teen center in the MLK library downtown, and I think that is a great kind of pilot program that could be dispersed in probably a smaller scale across the libraries across town, which is a great place to bring teens not only to learn new skills and to try out new ideas. There's a music production room in that teen center, which is cool, and then they also have 3D printers and all kinds of tech stuff. But also a safe place for them to be to do their homework, to learn, to be together in a positive environment. And I think that's something that the City Council should really watch carefully as it unfolds in MLK and get it to work well and be a place that's attractive to teens, and then figure out how to scale that down and bring it out into the other libraries around town.
Okay, I'm gonna try to squeeze in 2 more questions before we can get to the closing. I'm gonna try to combine this one. This is a 3-part question. But it's on the it's on the background on police checks on police officers. In general, please address that. Okay. And then how will you do background checks beyond high school and college? And some officers have had negative health issues during childhood. that have not been addressed and they carry on in their adult lives. So
Mental
just
health issues.
mental health issues,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, mental health issues. So let's, if you can consolidate that into one question, addressing the backgrounds and the background checks of police officers. What's your position? Should we be doing something differently, or what should we be doing? I believe starting with you, Helen.
Okay, not knowing how, police background checks are fully vetted, I don't really have a position, but I can tell you something that's a little bit personal to me that is very much of a concern. My son served 2 tours in Iraq. He was hit by an IED twice as a driver. My son has PTSD. He's working through it. I would be very concerned about bringing in military that has served active duty that might have PTSD issues in our police force. And I know the city council has looked at that, but as I have my own personal commitment, because I know as a mother how to learn to cope with PTSD symptoms, and I can tell you, the 4th of July with the fireworks going off, that's one thing. We talk about it, but it's not easy. And I can tell you there's a lot of active military that are returning, and I'm sure that that's a very big issue. So I would be very, concerned about any type of that type, with the police, with active military and using that.
Okay. Deb.
As well, I am not well versed in how the background checks work right now into accepting people into the police academy. However, I do think it's important to screen for mental illness, and there are ways you can do that without even using records, because I'm sure those are health records that may be sealed. But there are ways. We kind of talked about the personal bias training and how you can do that on the computer. There are mental health screenings that are available. My best friend from growing up from the time I was 6 years old is a psychologist, and she actually does these types of screenings for her work, so I know that they're there and they're available. So I definitely think that should be happening. I heard some part of that question about things that happened in high school and college, and I think I struggle with that a little bit, because I think it's important to give people a second chance, and it doesn't mean before you were, I say this a lot about your fully formed prefrontal cortex. My kids are young, and so they don't have executive functioning, right, because they haven't reached that age where their brain is fully developed. So I think there are things that you may do when you are younger without the benefit of your fully formed functioning brain, that you should be given the benefit of the doubt and be given a second chance. So while I think those older records should be considered, I also think it's important to more heavily weight what people did as adults and how they've been behaving as adults. So I think it's important to take that sort of with a grain of salt if you can get that information.
Okay. One final question before we go into your closing statements, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. President to see if he wants to do any closing and final question. Starting with you, Helen, do you support the Parker Newsom initiative to legalize marijuana in California? Please share your position. 1 minute.
I have no position yet on that one. I haven't really studied it. I do support medical marijuana in the dispensaries as long as they're operating legally within San Jose.
Okay. Deb.
I'm a data person, as I've said before, and we know that marijuana has been legalized now in a couple of states, and it's working okay, in Colorado as well as in Washington State. So yes, I am supporting the legalization of marijuana. I think it's important for us to recognize that it's a substance that has not caused the pain and suffering that other illegal drugs have caused, and we have partially legalized it already, and we haven't seen any negative effects. What I do support is having cities still continue to be able to decide where they zone it, so they can keep it away from preschools and daycares and schools. I think that's important, but I also think it's important for us to recognize that this isn't a truly dangerous substance as other illegal drugs are, and it's been legalized in other states successfully and without the the vast majority of problems that we've been warned about for many years. So yes, I am supporting that.
And just for everyone's sake, the reason why I left that question last is the state NAACP was instrumental in negotiating the terms of that being placed on the ballot. Often when you see African American males and people of color arrested for these petty crimes and forced into the system, it's because of marijuana. Legalization of it will put us on a balanced playing field. No, we're not pushing that people should be out there smoking weed, but what we are trying to push is equality and to remove people from the criminal justice system. So at that, what I'm going to do is 2 minutes, Helen, for your closing, and then Dev, and then I'm going to turn it over to the president.
Great. I'm going to stand up again. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to share just a little bit of my life and a little bit of my stories with you, and to be able to answer some of your questions. The questions were thoughtful. They were, and they were different. We've been to a lot of these debates. I think we have 8 more to go. So it really was nice to be here. I've been in a life of public service again for over 25 years, and my kids have. My son Brandon did the Rose Garden markers in the Rose Garden. My son, again, you heard about his military tour, and my husband. Public service is incredibly important to me, and I want to take that to City Council. I want to expand upon the hours. I want to be more available to you as a council member, and to do those type of things so we can lift up all of our communities and we can work together to solve some more difficult issues. I think you've heard some of my priorities on public safety, on homeless and affordable housing, and on transportation. And I think when we work together, we can solve insurmountable problems because we've done it. We can't build that park and take 4 years if you didn't have to encounter some difficulties. So I look forward to working with you. I am people powered, and I look forward to being on day 1 on the dais and getting things done for you. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you to the NAACP leadership for putting this on, and to the students for organizing all of it, and for asking our questions and doing those wonderful introductions. It was really fantastic. We don't get enough students participating in the process, and I think it's awesome that you guys were here and did this, so thank you. I failed to mention that I've been endorsed by both former Mayor Reed as well as current Mayor Locardo and Vice Mayor Herrera, as well as current council member Johnny Camus. And the reason that all of them have endorsed me is because they know me, and they know that my leadership style is collaborative and it's data driven. You've heard me talk about data a lot, and economics, and being a data nerd. It's very true. But the reason that I like getting that information is I think it's the most objective way to get to the best decision for the most people. And in talking about data, I want to be clear, I also mean gathering information from the people who are going to be impacted by the policy. So I want all the stakeholders at the table so that I can learn and make the best decision possible, so that we can collaborate together and come to a compromise. I don't think compromise is a dirty word. I think it's a great word, and compromise and collaboration are really what we see on the City Council now and what we need to continue to see. So I'm, again, pleased to be endorsed by both Mayor Locardo and former Mayor Reed, who understand that it's important to have smart, innovative government, but also to be collaborative and to come up with as many policies that are good for as many people as possible. So again, thank you. I look forward to working with you, and thank you again for having us tonight.
Thank you. Reverend Moore.
I want to thank both candidates for coming out and participating in our forum tonight, but more than that, I'd like to bring up my youth. Youth, come on up. Come on up. Please come on up at this time. For those who don't know, I became a member of the NAACP a year after graduating from high school. So it was in 1978 my membership in this organization originally started. And I like to say this is where these youth are starting at now in their high school walk and getting involved in civil rights as well as community activism. So I'd like you guys, if you could come up and take a picture with the candidates.
Absolutely.
Rick, please. And I'd like the president, if you'd like to say anything before we leave tonight. Go down, 2 down. You can just stand right in the middle.
Get that photo up. Oh, okay.
invitation to come and speak with us because I am a very firm believer that community and interaction and collaboration with public officials is very, very important in solving issues with our community. So I'd also like to thank everyone for coming out and because being concerned is a very crucial thing. So thank you for especially